Welcome from me as well, and thank you here for introducing me. My case will be mostly about the human element within the digitalization of the work floor. So that's where I will be focusing on. My name is Pieter Lesage. I'm the founder and partner and also designer at Studio Dott, a design agency in Antwerp with offices in Hong Kong. And as a quick introduction, we are a design agency. We focus on physical products, digital products. We design services. We do some interior work, branding, and a lot of strategy work, which is my personal focus within the company. The project I'm talking about, and I can't mention the client itself, but we have an agreement that I can show the case in itself. But we did it together with Tactics, who were the development party from the project, and we were the in-between between trying to translate the needs of the customer and his employees to what Tactics could develop. And as a quick introduction to the cases, it was a very thing about what can we do short term and where do we want to end up in the long term, and because it's not a one-time transition from going to a regular factory to a digital factory. So the case, as in many factories, was you have some machines, you have workers walking around the factory with pencil and paper, and they have to annotate some figures or some levels of machines of data from the machines on paper. Then it's a lot of human intelligence to know what to do with it, and it's from experience and situational data that they decide to do something, some maintenance to the machine or changing some settings to have an improved outcome. And at the end of the day, all the papers get archived in some room somewhere aside. So the first step we did, and that's a case we did, is changing paper to tablets. So the workers are working around with tablets. It's still human input, but all the input goes to a platform where we can reuse the data from history, but together with still human intelligence, we make decisions to do maintenance, settings, whatsoever. The next step will be to change the input method to more sensor data and getting automated data within the platform, and trying to reduce the human intelligence or the reliance on human intelligence a bit, and more getting to the platform, but still having human workers doing the changes to get, as an end result, getting a fully automated system. The second thing I wanted to talk about as an introduction is technical architecture versus user interface, because as in many factories as well, there were a lot of digital silos, and each worker had to log into several systems. Was it SAP or some other legacy or new silos that were developed, and it was always logging in, logging out, going to different systems. What we created is a universal interface, which we then applied to legacy systems. Sometimes we created a new front end for a legacy system, or we even created totally new systems with the new interface as well. But I make sure that the worker only has one interface, or he thinks everything is one system, but on the back end it has connections with multiple systems, which can be interchanged in the future. So the process, it was a project we did in COVID times. So normally we do a lot of workshops together with people. We had to do this from a distance. We used Miro as a system to work together with the employees, workers. It was an international project as well. But that was really pleasant, and it's something we're going to keep doing in the future. The result, because that's what everybody wants to see, of course. So it's a smart factory interface. It's mostly tablets, but it's also can be used on computers. And we chose for an application-based system, so to be able to add and reduce apps within certain factories within the multinational and within different areas. but also being able to interchange them in the future and having a flexible system. But the top bar is a new application actually that's aggregating info from all the other applications, and that's a way where people can quickly interchange between systems. One of the apps we created was for the worker walking around annotating settings. Here he gets a list or a sequence of things he has to measure, and in this way it's an automated list. And it's an optimized list because some machines need like an hourly check, some 2 hourly, some daily, some shiftly. So it makes its own list, which makes sense, but also it's depending on where the worker is at that moment. Because if he has like an emergency and he had to do something on the other side of the factory, then the whole list rearranges from where he is. So it's optimized his route through the factory to gain some time. Once he is at the machine, he has to do some input. There are instructions on what he needs to do. We included that to make sure that new employees can quicker do the work. And on the right side, you see the interface to have the manual input at this time for data. But if there's an interface on the machine, we always mimic the interface in this application, so it's recognizable. So the right side might change the look of it depending on at which machine you're looking at, which is important. And when you have entered data and it's outside limits, for instance, then you get suggestions what you could do. Because in the past, it was depending on the experience of the worker that he knew that, oh, it's out of limit, then I have to change certain knobs or certain settings. Now you get suggestions. But also we give the history data because we want to empower workers to know what they're doing. Because if it's a trend going up, and it's not only the situational data you have, but you have history data to look at too. Not all workers do something with that, but the people who want to do something with it can do something. And it was a big conscious choice we made together with the client, not to trying to eliminate workers, but trying to empower them through the process. And we got a lot of positive feedback on that. So you can, for instance, try to reboot a machine or reshuffle something, and then you can add if it worked or not. Or you can create a new action you do, and that's the way how the system learns. So we didn't try to get all the experience of the workers at one time in the system. It's a learning process, and we see each action, what is the result afterwards, and with that data the system can suggest later on better solutions for future elements. And there's also a way to escalate it to a maintenance team or whatever is needed in that case. A second, that's the new application that has been created, or new system. It's where data from all the other systems is aggregated, and you have this one logbook view of everything you want to know on the factory, or you need to know, depending on what it is. But it's also a way to communicate between departments, because sometimes similar machines are in different departments, and this way they can learn from each other how things work or how settings could be improved or whatever. But also between shifts, because we figured out that the communication between shifts was really dependent on the type of workers and especially on the team leader, how good that went or not. And by aggregating the information centrally, the shift changeover has been improved a lot that way. Yeah, and there's some live dashboards. In the past, there was a dashboard view as like a team sprint meeting in the beginning of a shift, but now the dashboards are live throughout the shift, so you can see how things evolve, and it's not a one-time element at the beginning of a shift, but it's a continuous element that's available on the tablet or computers, but can also be available on some screens on the factory floor. Yeah, and a lot of settings. One of the more difficult parts is, but I'm not going into detail in that part because it it's too complex at some point, was how to arrange shifts and how planning of people and whatever is also inside the system. We created and designed apps, but as I said, it's going to be a never-ending story. So that's why we created the design system, where if there are new apps in the future, or they want to make changes to apps or add functionality to the apps, there is a complete documented system where programmers can use and to add and change functionality without breaking the logic of users and the flow of things work. And we did that because as a design team from Studio Dott, we want to make ourselves redundant because we like to do new projects. We don't like to keep working on the same project. So that's why we take a lot of effort in handing over projects so they can work on themselves to add functionality. And the last bit I want to talk about is that we created a specific branding for the project on Smart Factory, and it doesn't have the company name in it. It's an internal promotion. It's not something that's going to be publicly visible, but we did that for a few reasons. One is to create some excitement about the change and trying to get some big bang moments when we go from what it used to be to a new system and getting people with it. But also because this was a multinational with a lot of plants all over the world, it's a way to promote it to different plants in different countries and trying to get other plants within the same system. And as a last, one slide too far, we also created a QR code that can be sticked on machines. It's something to be physical presence throughout the factory because each machine now has this QR code on it with a nice branding around it. But it's also a quick interface with the tablet. You take a picture of it and you go directly to the page of that machine and you could do some things. But the branding element of it is also very important to be present at the factory floor. So that was quickly, because I only had 12 minutes through the system. I don't know if there are any questions or whatever I can answer.